In today's episode, I'll be running you through why I'm swapping out my old ZD30 from my Patrol to the new BMW M57 engine. So I thought I might start out by explaining this engine a little bit. So this is the ZD30, which is a very common Patrol engine, particularly the post-2000 models. It's not really known as the world's best engine, and there's a few reasons for that. So the problems with this engine started really early on. So from factory, Nissan quoted a 6-litre oil capacity. However, they actually required an 8.3-litre capacity. So the dipsticks were initially made to meet that 6-litre capacity, which meant that people weren't filling up their oil quite high enough. Not anyone else's fault, but Nissan eventually caught on, realised their mistake, and got all the old engines in and added a slightly shorter dipstick to try and resolve that issue. And unfortunately, the ZD30's problems didn't quite stop there. So following that, we've seen in a lot of engines problems with longevity due to head gasket issues, cracked heads, melted pistons, lots of turbo issues. These engines and the way the ECU is mapped out, they're known to have boost spikes, which can cause problems with the turbos as well as the pistons themselves and the rest of the engine. A lot of these problems were resolved with the CRD, so the head gasket problems are a lot less likely with the CRD models. However, they're still not a great engine. To work on, they're a pain in the ass. The engineers were just, I don't know what they were thinking, man. So I've been wanting to swap out this engine for quite some time, but obviously money being a factor, it's quite expensive to do that, so I just thought I'd hang on until something went wrong, and unfortunately something did go wrong. So the initial thing that went wrong was the exhaust manifold, which are also known for warping in these engines too. So the exhaust manifold has warped, which has led to a leak, and then every time I drive it, it makes a really high-pitched squealing until it gets up to temperature. Every time I've driven with this engine in the last few months, it's made a really high-pitched squealing as that exhaust leaks through the manifold. And then recently I had a thermostat go, which led to the engine overheating. And then after I fixed that, the viscous hub on the fan went, which also led it to overheat. And those two things, I think, were enough to unfortunately cause a head gasket issue. So my engine's been blowing exhaust fumes through the coolant, as well as blowing coolant out the exhaust, which is not so great. And those issues combined, I thought it was best just to not waste the money. I was thinking about doing an engine conversion anyway, so I ummed and ahed about what I was going to do for a while, but I sort of decided that this engine, being the age it is, it's about 250,000 Ks on the engine, and it's been tuned to push a bit more power through it. It's probably going to give me more problems than it's worth, so there's no point in spending several $1,000s and the time that it would take me to fix all those problems. I thought I was better off just pulling the engine out and buying a new one. So, the donor car. The donor car is a 2008 E70 X5, which came with the M57 N2 engine, as well as the 6 HP 28X gearbox. So that not only pushes more power, but is a hell of a lot more reliable, and the engine bay, so much more neat, so much easier to work on. And I thought during this whole process I could also learn a lot about the engine and be able to fix a lot of problems if I'm out on the tracks as well. So this here will be my donor vehicle for my engine conversion. So it's a 2008 E70 X5, and it came out with the BMW M57 N2, as well as the 6 HP 28X gearbox, which is an automatic 6-speed transmission. So this combination is known for great reliability. It pushed about, I think it was like 250 odd horsepower from factory, and with a small tune you can push that to about 300 horsepower. In comparison to the old shitbox ZD30, that pushed less than 100 horsepower before I tuned it, and it didn't push much more afterwards. So slow as fuck. I do love the manual gearbox, but I've made the decision just for fuel efficiency and control whilst off-roading. I thought it would be best just to do the full swap out, so I'll be putting the automatic transmission in as well. So I'm pretty keen. This car is in fantastic condition, so it's a bit of a shame to almost use it as a donor car. Like all the panels are all straight, all the paint's in pretty good nick except for some slight sun fading on the bonnet. but even inside's perfect. The only problem with this car, from what the seller told me, was a small DPF problem. I plugged in my scan tool, which it seems like it actually has been clearing the DPF, so the DPF's clear. It seems like there's an emissions error due to the EGR being blocked, which, to be honest, I was going to take out anyway and give it a clean before putting it back in to run. My engineer does want all that stuff in there, so he wants the DPF in there as well as the EGR for all the emission standards. So yeah, it's a very, very well running engine, and I'm pretty stoked with it. This thing's sick. So this is the car that the donor vehicle is going into. Alrighty, so this will be the final resting spot, hopefully, for the M57. So this will be the donor. Oh, no, it won't be the donor vehicle. This will be the vehicle it's going into, Sam. Yes, very good. All right. So this is my half pulled apart 2012 coil cab Patrol, and this will be the final resting spot for the new engine. So I've had a few questions just from people that I know about whether or not you can do an earlier model engine into a later model car. So this is a 2012 and the new engine will be a 2008. However, they were both made to meet the exact same emission standards. I can't remember off the top of my head what they actually are, but they were made to meet the same standards, and therefore are seen as equivalent. A lot of people tell you that you can't actually get an older engine into a newer vehicle and still get it ticked off by the engineer. However, that's not necessarily always the case. It's an easier way to kind of go, yep, you'll be sweet as long as it's later than the model of the car, but it's a bit more complex than that. So there's different emission standards that came out in different years. So I believe it was from 2007 to around about 2013, they had the same emission standard. So anything that was within that same emission standard, my particular engineer, and this is all in Victoria, was happy to sign off. So engineering depends on the state that you're in and depends on your engineer and what they're willing to sign off. So speak to your engineer first, but it is possible in Victoria to do that. For me, I had to go for the newer M57 or the N57 because the original M57, the cast iron block one, would have been in the prior emission standard to this car, so it wouldn't have been engineerable. So why not a TD42, why not an LS or a Barra? What was the thinking behind the M57? So for me, I do a lot of hard wheeling. That's most of what I enjoy. So I wanted to get something that had a little bit more power and a little bit more of that kind of low down torque. So firstly, TD42, I don't like them. I reckon they're old. They're also fucking expensive too. Like a new blacktop motor is ridiculously priced. Plus they're kind of slow, to be honest. Like unless you're pushing stupid boost through them, you're not going to be pushing all that much power. And if you do push stupid boost through them, you're going to end up with a kettle, or you're going to blow ahead. So you'll end up with more problems than it's worth. These engines out of factory push about the sort of 250 odd horsepower, but there's heaps of blokes in the UK that have been able to push 400 to 600 with very, very minimal upgrades. I won't be doing that because I want to keep it nice and reliable, but the bottom ends are strong as fuck, and the only real mods you'd need to do would be mostly top end stuff, so it'd be mostly pretty simple to push pretty decent power if you wanted to. They're a nice, reliable, somewhat powerful engine that's super fuel efficient as well. There are some guys that are getting about sort of the 9-10 litres per 100 out of these in a Patrol. It's a smooth engine and gearbox combination. It's pretty quick. It runs off diesel, so when you're super rural and there's only diesel available, it's a good option there. So that sort of pushes into the why not LS, why not Barra. If I was going to do either of those, I'd probably do an LS just because V8 sounds sick. But my brother's already done an LS Patrol, and it's not terrible on fuel, but it's still like that 15 to 20 litres per 100. And my Patrol is my daily as well, so I wanted something that would be not terrible on fuel, that I could get around well, get around reliably. Oh yeah, and that also leads on with the TD42 conversion in my Patrol, because it's a 2012 model. That means that you basically cannot put a TD42 in it because of the emissions standards. The TD42 is a lot older, and therefore in Victoria we just can't get it engineered. I think the latest model you can do it on is like a 2006, 2007-ish. And I wanted to say diesel. I wanted reliable, decent power, where I wasn't going to blow up my engine and I wasn't going to snap a crank or end up boiling my coolant or something like that. And then Barras, I reckon they're pretty cool, and I reckon you can push a lot of power through them, but I don't really think I need more power than the 300 odd horsepower I can get from just a mild tune and some preventative maintenance. So that's why I decided for this pathway, and I reckon it's going to be a great car. So what's the plan with the new Patrol? First things first, I've already pulled up the engine, as you would have seen, and I'm starting to strip back the whole engine bay to try and repaint it in a new colour. So I'll eventually get around to painting the outside of the car as well. But for the moment, whilst I have the engine out, I wanted to repaint the engine bay. And then I was sort of thinking, well, whilst I'm there and pulling everything off between the cab and the chassis, I may as well undo the extra couple of bolts it's going to take to pull off the cab. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to come in and sort of take a lot of the paint off, weld on some new chassis bracing as well around the coil towers, and then do fish plates along the whole frame of the chassis. That way, if I ever want to do something stupid and like jump it or, you know, all that sort of jazz, then it'll all be braced, ready to go, and I'll just have to do some new diffs. So like, whilst I have it all off, I think it's worthwhile repainting the whole chassis. And whilst I'm doing that, I may as well just do a lot of bracing to make sure it doesn't have any problems later down the track. And I've also got a new tray that I've already fabbed up. There's no episodes on that because that was before I decided to start filming everything. But long story short, we'll go through the whole engine conversion together, pulling out my engine, pulling out the donor vehicle engine and transmission as well, and then all the different parts that will go into it. So I'll be predominantly using the Fusion Fab kits and wiring and all that sort of stuff. But as a person who hasn't done a whole lot of engine stuff before, and I've never done a conversion before, it'll be good to show you guys how challenging it is, or how easy it is. I don't think it's going to be too hard, but you never know. So yeah, I'll bring you along for all that journey, and I hope you enjoy it.